Good evening and welcome to the 7th presentation of Avalanche Canada's 2021-22 webinar series. My name is Brent Strand. I'm your producer for the evening. We got Alex Cooper in the background online with the moderator looking out for your questions in the Q&A box and the chat box. We hope all you folks had a fantastic holiday. There's certainly a lot of epic powder to be had out there, and we had a little bit of cold temps out in the west here. But you know, Avalanche Canada, our mission is to help you folks get educated and get out in the backcountry. We want you to play safe in the mountains throughout this entire winter. We want you to know more, go farther, and come home. First, we'd like to acknowledge that our session is being hosted in the territory of 4 nations, the Sinixt, the Secwepemc, the Ktunaxa, and the Silks. As a national organization, we also acknowledge for many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations whose lands we live and recreate on. First off, I'd like to thank our sponsors. As a nonprofit organization, we really rely heavily on our sponsorship out there. We have government partners, our program partners, our premier sponsors, our sporting sponsors, as well as contributors that donate. All the stuff adds up and it helps immensely. Today's webinar is hosted by Mountain Equipment Company. They're our presenting sponsor tonight. We thank you for joining us, and we do appreciate your interest in avalanche safety. You too can help donate to help sponsor stuff along the lines of Avalanche Canada's webinars. Support programs by donating. There's a link in the chat box. To start things off, everybody, you're all muted. You don't have access to your video cameras. We'd like you to ask questions. If you want to ask a verbal question, just use that raise hand feature in the bottom of your screen. Those are really good for interaction if you want to talk to Grant, our presenter tonight, get a good interaction. Otherwise, you can write in the Q&A box, and we're going to get to that, as promptly as we can. The chat box, we're going to utilize that for web links and resource links in there. We really ask that you folks really try and use that Q&A box so that we can keep track of those questions that are flowing in. So tonight's webinar, choosing terrain for skiers. Terrain choice is always the answer to having a safe, fun day out in the backcountry. When the avalanche hazard is high or you're concerned about certain avalanche problems and you want to be able to recognize which terrain is safe and more importantly, which terrain is not safe to go into. So you're in for a treat tonight because Avalanche Canada senior forecaster Grant Helgeson is going to lead you through a variety of images and exercises to hone your terrain choice skills. Grant's going to present various scenarios of terrain combined with the danger ratings. Your questions are welcome throughout the entire presentation tonight, and they're most valuable if you try and pertain the question to the certain scenario. So we're going to try and have good interaction here and capture those questions as soon as we can while we're going through these scenarios. So don't be bashful tonight. Get your hands up, for those verbal questions or type them in the chat box. Make things happen there. Grant Helgeson, he does bring a wealth of information. He's been a forecaster for 14 years for both up in Canada and United States. And he's been pursuing his own winter backcountry pursuits on skis and on a snowmobile for over 20 years. So he's seen a lot of terrain over the past couple decades. And he's going to share a bunch of his little bits of information to help you choose the best terrain out there. So I'm going to pass it over to Grant. I hope you folks enjoy the show tonight.
Hey, thanks so much, Brent, and psyched everyone's tuning in here. We will just switch over. Brent, I'm still seeing your screen. Are you there? We go. Okay, let me just get this share going. And we'll be rocking and rolling. Should be right there. Everyone can see my screen now?
Good there, Grant.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, choosing terrain. Psyched that you guys are all here. I bet a lot of you were here last year, and perhaps we've met in person somewhere along the lines. How many folks do we have on the call so far, Brent?
Looks like you got like 200, and it's increasing. It started at 138, and we're at 210 now. So yeah,
awesome. We're gonna have some fun tonight. I think that this is one of my favorite presentations to give. And it's changed a lot when we used to do this kind of thing in person, and I would just will you folks come up and join me at the front of the stage in front of 100 people, but it's actually a little easier tonight. We've got some fresh scenarios lined out for you. We're going to try a new way of looking at this too, and I really encourage you to jump into the chat. I'll be looking over here a bunch to see what you all are saying. Raise a hand, let's communicate. the more interactive this is, the more fun it's going to be. So yeah, I'm Grant. I've been doing this for a long time. One of the senior forecasters at Avalanche Canada. And I want to get I want to know a little bit more about you, our audience here tonight. So I've got a series of questions here. And my first question is, how much training have you got? Have you taken an AST1? Have you just been joining us on some webinars? Have you taken an AST2? Are you a snow pro out there? Or have you don't have any training at all? Where we can kind of talk to all audiences here. So just fill that in and we'll get some results pouring in here. It helps me a lot to know who I'm talking to out there. Okay, sweet. So the vast majority of us have taken AST1, about 65%, about 20% AST2, and just a few folks have taken none, and there's a few pros in the audience too. Okay, awesome. My next question is, how do you travel in the mountains? Are you splitboarding? Are you skiing? It makes a little bit of a difference. I'm a long-time skier and also a long-time sledder. Never been a splitboarder. I even had to suffer through the years when skiing wasn't cool. I'm almost 40 here, so in the 90s, it was definitely not cool to be, in the 2000s even, it was not cool to be a teenager who skied. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Vast majority skiers. Okay, great. I feel like I'm talking to my people here. Still love you too, splitboarders. Now, how many years have you been doing this? Are you a rookie, or have you got lots of gray in your beard? And is your hair thinned, perhaps as much as Marty Schaefer's from all the stress? So long I can't remember. Tell me a little bit about how long you've been doing this. Thanks so much for playing along with me. This makes it a lot more fun for me. Cool, nice spread. Got about 20% newbies, 30% 1 to 2 seasons, 30% 3 to 5, and so long I can't remember, 25%. So nice spread. Okay, this will be fun. And I encourage everyone to kind of chime in on the chats as well as we move through this. And finally, what's your local snowpack? Are you hanging on the coast? Are you in inner mountains somewhere in the Columbias, or maybe down into Montana, Idaho? Or are you on the continental side of it, the drier side, as we start to get into like the east side of the Purcells, the Rockies? I've had a chance to live and play in all these snowpacks over the years, and they each kind of have their own special pros and cons, really. Oh, interesting. Pretty even spread there too. Okay, cool. This is going to be fun. Thanks so much for that. I really appreciate that. So this is all about matching terrain to conditions. As Brent spoke to earlier, I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road. Essentially, that's what all these avalanche courses are all about. Of course, we practice rescue and we want to look out for one another, but the thing that's really difficult about this whole backcountry touring thing is, where do you read the avalanche forecast, and then where do you go? What's the best thing to do? What's in, what's out? We're going to get into all that here tonight. So quick little brief on the anatomy of the avalanche forecast. Of course, it all starts out with the headline, and we spend a lot of time as forecasters at Avalanche Canada writing these headlines. This really sets the tone for the forecast. You know, if you can remember one thing from my forecast, I actually hope it's this. It sets the tone. New snow and wind are forming deep and reactive slabs, potential exists for storm slabs. Avoid avalanche training and avoid overhead hazard. And that's actually from a forecast that was written today. We're going to get more into that in a little bit here. And then as you move down through the forecast, you get into the danger ratings. And of course, everyone knows about the danger ratings. It's so common when you walk around a parking lot. Everyone's talking about it as high, considerable, as moderate. And it's a good indication of the overall level of danger, but it doesn't really let you know what to do. Aside from high, it says travel and avalanche terrain not recommended, but considerable, moderate, again, it's kind of a light bulb type thing, like when you're at the stoplight, but what does it really mean? And I would argue that it doesn't really mean that much to us as we head into the backcountry. But avalanche problems are really the who, what, when, where, why, how big, how likely of the avalanche forecast. And there's some of the most important parts of the avalanche forecast. Here you can see it tells us the vegetation bands, the alpine tree line, below tree line. What aspects is this avalanche problem on? What are the chances of triggering this avalanche? It goes from unlikely all the way up to certain. And the expected size, 1, 2, 3, 4, or then to 5, the biblical avalanche would wipe out a town. So I would really encourage all of you to really know your avalanche problems. That's where the rubber meets the road. And I think we have a fairly experienced group on here tonight, so I'm sure everyone's cued into that. And of course, we get into avalanche details too. We talk about snowpack summary and avalanche summary, but we're not going to even touch that right now. So here's what we're going to do here tonight. We're going to get into some interactive terrain exercises. We're going to get a danger rating, the avalanche problems, the relevant weather, and a terrain photo. And then we're going to kind of decide what's in, what's out. And then we're just going to have a little fireside chat about some different ideas about the photo. I want to hear from all of you with your questions, with your comments. This can be quite interactive. So where does this come from? Well, this comes from what guides do every day. And so the guides take the current conditions in the morning when they're out ski guiding, and they say there's red runs and there's green runs. And the green runs are the things that they can go out and actually utilize for the day. And the red runs are things they're not going to use. And they set that mindset first thing in the morning. They don't get halfway through the day and decide, you know what, some of those things that we thought were red are actually good to go. Let's change it up. No, they stick to the things that they decided in the morning were good to go, and they don't head into the red terrain. And that's a mentality, I think, as recreationists, that's really important. As you get more and more experience with this thing, like you basically become a Google Earth nerd, at least I hope you do, along with tools like Gaia. I mean, that's how I chat with my friends about where we want to go in the morning, what's in, what's out, and what kind of terrain we're going to go out and play with. So here we go. Does anybody have any questions or anything interesting or comments before we jump into our first scenario here? I'll get these going so I can see them too.
Hey, Grant, Alex here. I don't see any questions yet. So maybe we can just keep moving and we'll get to some more later when they start coming in.
Sweet. Thanks, Alex. So here's our first scenario. This is actually a scenario. This is from a forecast that I literally wrote for today. So I wrote it yesterday. It was live today for the Columbia Mountains. I'm going to read through it and I want you guys to do the same. So the headline reads, watch for formation of fresh wind slabs and exposed terrain. The southwest wind picks up ahead of the next storm on Thursday, which obviously was today. Snow amounts appear modest for Thursday, but watch for the hazard to increase through the day, especially in areas that receive more than 20 centimeters of new snow. So I thought the hazard was probably something like considerable, moderate. And I think that was probably still upon further reflection, it's a good forecast or danger ratings. And what were the problems? Well, there was a lingering wind slab problem, but there was also a fresh one as the prefrontal winds started coming into the forecast area. So time and relatively cool temps have likely tempered the reactivity of the old storm slabs formed over the weekend, but a fresh round of wind slabs will likely form Thursday as southwest wind picks up ahead of the next storm. So I thought that the chances of triggering one of these freshly formed wind slabs were probably likely. And I think that was actually a pretty good forecast from what I've seen come out through the day. And then there's this lingering persistent slab, which to be totally honest is a real pain in the ass. This persistent slab is a product of the atmospheric rivers that came in early December, and it laid down a bulletproof crust. If you've been out digging around in the snow at all, you will have seen it. It's been present almost everywhere in the province. Some places it's more of a problem than others, but it's got facets on top of it. So it's got that. It's a big bulletproof crust. It's got facets on it, and it's got anywhere from 80 to 150 centimeters of snow settling on top of it. And I can tell you that it's been a hot topic of discussion in our office and throughout the professional avalanche community, because it's tough to know what's going to happen with a persistent slab problem like that as you add more weight to it in the form of new snow. If you've been watching our products too, you will see that down in the southeast corner, Lizard Range and the Purcells, the Kootenay boundary, especially, there have been some spooky human triggered avalanches on this thing, but it hasn't been as much of a factor in the North-South Columbia, Glacier National Park, that kind of thing. So while activity on this interface is really tapered off, it makes it difficult to have a lot of confidence in stepping out into bigger terrain, as avalanches failing on this layer have the potential to be large and destructive. And in my personal skiing over the last week, it's been ridiculously good, but myself and my crew, we haven't really stepped out in any big terrain because it just feels too weird right now with this crust in play. You know, these are the kind of avalanche I don't want to tangle with, something that's 80 to 150 centimeters in depth. That's not an avalanche that I want to be involved with at all. This wind slab, I can probably go out and work with that. I can probably ski cut it. I can poke around on it. It's easy to avoid. The persistent slab I have to avoid by just staying out of its way, basically. So this is our information. This is our mindset. So I want to pretend like you read this last night, and then you start looking at this kind of terrain. So just take a moment to look at the terrain and think about how the forecast would overlay on this slope. You know, where are the problem areas? What terrain would you avoid? What might be good to go? Give you another 10 seconds, just have a good look at it.
Grant, I got a quick question. What aspect is that facing us there?
This is actually a big north-facing aspect. Thank you, Brett. That's a great question. It's in the spring, as you can see with these. So you kind of envisage that this is the terrain you're looking at, but it would have been quite cold and stormy, obviously, today. But that's what those old avalanches are from when this photo was taken. And now I'm going to overlay some different shapes on here. And so I think these kind of make up the primary terrain options in this kind of place. So I'm curious, what places do you guys think are in today? We'll queue up a poll here. So you can select multiple options. So what do you think is in? Is it the purple on the bottom? Is it the orange, the blue at the top, the yellow? Take 10, 15 seconds here and tell me which ones you think are in. And then we'll have a bit of a chat about it and we can kind of discuss why and ask some questions too. So remember, I've got this lingering wind slab problem, maybe some fresh wind slabs being formed. And I've got this persistent slab problem, which is still in play. It's unlikely to be triggered, but if I do, it's going to be bad. So considerable, moderate, moderate. I think we really have below tree line, and alpine terrain here to think about. Give you another 5 seconds, and then we'll close this up. How's
our folks out there? If this is spring, what time of day do you figure this is happening at?
Well, I want people to think like this is today. That this is
okay.
Today.
So not spring, it's today.
The photo is spring-like, but this is the terrain we're heading into today. So it's stormy. It's exactly what we've laid out. We got this wind slab. It's cold. It's nice and cold. We got southwest wind increasing. Maybe I could, yeah. So let's close the poll and see what people have chosen here. Okay, cool. So purple, everyone feels is in, 88%. Let's talk about that a little bit. And can we leave this poll up here? Hopefully it can persist, Brent. The purple, yeah, is good. I think that's good to go, right? There's going to be lots of good skiing in here. I think it's quite protected from any kind of persistent slab problem, most likely. It's really well anchored. There's going to be great skiing and riding in it. I can probably get away with a lot in the purple. The orange. It's interesting to me that a third of our group here thinks that it's in, and 2/3 thinks it's out. Blue is 3% of people said that that was in, and I tend to agree that the vast majority said that's not in. I don't think that's in today because it's big, it's steep. There's going to be fresh wind slabs forming up there, and this is also like we've been seeing in all these steep rocky places. This is kind of like the terrain that we've been seeing these persistent slabs come out in. And then we've got the yellow. We've got the purple or the yellow here as well. Yellow, about 40% of our group thought it was in. I'm actually just going to back up a little bit here so we can take this off. There we go. So let's think about this a little bit more. Scott Meadows, yeah. Scott says many exercises are based on aerial images. We don't have those when we're outside. What about choice made on the ground? Well, yeah, I accept that. But actually, Scott, the thing you need to think about is like, I just wouldn't go to a terrain that I didn't have an aerial image of. And you have all the aerial images in the entire province on Google Earth. And anyway, a good tool like Gaia GPS. Can you make the presentation full screen bigger? I don't think I can. That is full screen. No, it'll only get smaller. Sorry, Linda. Maybe zoom in a little bit on your side. So coming back to that idea, I like that, Scott. Get into Google Earth, like look where you want to go and surf around it so you can decide. You already have an idea what the terrain looks like before you go in there. Because if you're down here in the trees and you have no idea what's above you, well, then you're just like, you're not going to know what's up there. I would never find myself here then thinking about like, well, what's over this ridge? Like I've got it on Gaia GPS, I've got the satellite overlay, I've got the topo overlay. So the pro move is to be playing with the right tools. And that's all of us. So get good at Google Earth, look around, draw lines in that program, have a catalog, and then get proficient with Gaia. I know that seems like kind of an advanced skill, but it is killer. FatMap is also another good program out there that I know a lot of people use. I personally prefer Gaia. That's only because I've been doing it for a long time, but you need to know the kind of training you're going into. So that's why we're using these aerial images to give you an idea of what's in and what's out. A day like today, I think you could go ride these trees all day long. It's going to be fantastic. To be totally honest, this yellow, what was this one? Yeah, this was orange. I would probably, if it was in the morning, because the storm was coming in later in the day, the wind is coming in later in the day. If I was out there in the morning, I'd probably go somewhere like this and just start to see how the snow felt in a spot just like this. Just as I moved out from what is below tree line to tree line, and of course, tree line is defined by there being more open spaces than trees. So that's getting into this terrain. I would consider this terrain in for the day. If I was approaching this and I was coming up here in the morning, I'm like, can you guys see my cursor actually? Is that a thing? Hopefully.
Yeah, Grant, somebody commented that the poll screen you have open might be blocking the image. So maybe if you can close it now if it's still open.
Okay, cool.
Sure, I'll close that up.
Cool. Actually, I think I can just annotate here too. So this will probably make it, this will be more, now we're talking. Okay, so if it was my day here, I would probably come touring in somewhere like this. You have all this terrain to access all day long. You can play with that. If I was thinking about going a little bit higher, I might start to step up into here, working a band of trees like this. And I'm just going to see what the snow feels like, because I'm primarily concerned about a wind slab right now. If it starts to stiffen up and it starts to feel like, oh, this snow has been heavily wind affected, well, then I'll just come back down. But if I start to get up into some of this terrain and realize, oh, it's actually quite soft, there's still snow in the trees, I'm not feeling a lot of wind effect, I would actually say that this is in. Now, I might, as I start to get up into this kind of piece, I'm trying to be affected by any avalanches that might come down from here, I'm probably going to stay out of this zone. But places like this, at tree line with a moderate avalanche hazard and knowing that there's wind slabs developing, I'm just going to keep my ear to the ground and just be watching for the snow to change, watching for fresh slabs to form. And if they're not, I might consider making a few passes in something like this. And then as the wind picks up, I can always retreat to the trees. Also, I think that yellow is something that I would explore as well. So I might actually come touring in something like this, throw my skin track in something like this. And again, just kind of be looking and feeling for how the snow feels. And of course, one at a time, but I might throw someone, to make a lap down into here, regrouping in these safe trees, reusing my skin track, again, poking out over here, seeing how the snow feels. Does it feel okay? Is it wind affected? If not, I'll probably make a pass on something like this. Might come back around and I might even take one more lap on my skin track and then ski something like this, or I might even think about, like, after making a run or two here, I might actually push my skin track up a little bit further into here. Does this feel good? Make a pass here, maybe a longer pass, come back, reuse my skin track, and then make a longer pass through these trees. And that's kind of that's how you work a day of backcountry skiing. I'm just learning. Actually, here we go. Clear my drawings. Bear with me for a second. Yeah, so that's how you work a day of backcountry skiing, because I come up here, I throw this skin track in, then I explore these other options and see how they feel. Maybe a second or third lap, I push just a little bit further, working the terrain, getting up to a natural high point up here that's protected. And then I can still make a pass all the way down here. I can come back around, work it again. I can step out, and I'm skiing fresh snow all day long. Like, these are going to be 300 or 400 meter runs, but that's how you construct a day of backcountry skiing. I've only put one up track in. I can be chatting with my group. If people are getting tired, we can think about pulling the plug. But this allows me to have a protected skin track and to make a lot of nice laps in here as I so choose. So I agree, blue is out, but I think that all of these are in, on a day like today. I would just be, again, watching for that when the snow is changing to see if there's active wind slabs forming. But if they're not, then I'm gonna go for it. And that's kind of what I was conveying, or I was hoping to convey in my headline here to you as my forecaster. Let's go back.
Hey, Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we have a hand up from the floor. David Mueller. You can go ahead and ask your question there.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, David.
That might have been a Zoom error. Sorry about that.
Hey, that's all right, David. We were just hopeful we'd have someone want to talk to us out there.
Oh, I have Bettina Mueller. Would you dig a snow pit to review snowpack before you decide where you're headed based on the forecast? No, I wouldn't. Digging snowpacks or digging snow pits only, it tells you here, I'll just kind of illustrate something here. Great question. I love the question. Okay. So again, Bettina, I apologize, I'm mispronouncing your name, but I'm moving through this terrain. I don't need to dig in anything because the two things I'm worried about are a wind slab, which I'm going to be able to feel right underneath my skis or my split board. Like I'm going to feel that. If it's stiff and hard and feels slabby, it's a wind slab. If it's soft and deep and I'm breaking trail, it's not a wind slab. So I don't need to dig a snow pit for that, for me to be aware of that. And furthermore, you know, like if I get up here, I want to feel, I want to use all the tools that I have on board to feel if I'm feeling a wind slab. I don't need to dig down to find one. Now, the second problem that we're working with here is a thing that's 80 to 150 centimeters deep. So, you know, that's 5 feet deep. I don't need to go dig up here to decide if that persistent slab is there. Like I can just assume it's there. And furthermore, I can actually assume it's here too, but the reactivity has just been so low that I'm just going to manage terrain in a way that I don't have to dig. So that's why I actually work my way through the trees, avoiding any kind of overhead hazard. I'm through the trees here. And then I might be through the trees into here, getting to that natural high point. I barely expose myself to any avalanche terrain. And that's why I'm choosing this mellow zone. That's why I'm not going up into like a big committing feature like this with a big convex rollover. I'm not going to go mess around with like any of these rock outcroppings where I'm more likely to trigger a persistent slab. I'm not going to go mess with any of this stuff. And that keeps me from having to dig a snow pit anywhere. So that was a great question. What is this zone called? We can look on Gaia. This zone is in a private tenure, so you're never going to be able to go and really access it. So I'm actually not going to name the zone. What do I think the range? But I think it's a good question. What do you think the range of slope angles is? Good question. I think that in the trees here, we're probably working with like, you know, 30 to maybe some 36, 37. So definitely potential for avalanches in here. This is probably like 35. Coming up into this stuff is probably some 40. When traversing valley bottoms, how can we assess risk from adjacent steeper terrain? I guess the broader question is how can we assess the risk of triggering from below? Yeah, good question. So, I mean, that's getting into a pretty complex thing. And I think that's actually, I'm not going to try and answer that question if I was out touring today. And that's why I'm going to literally be walking, like using trees and not undercutting anything. Staying out of avalanche terrain while I'm climbing. You know, you could, yes, this is avalanche terrain, but it's a small slope. If this thing peels out, like it's going to stop here in this bench. And I realize that's kind of hard to see, but this is an avalanche. This is a piece of avalanche terrain I can handle. I'm just not going to expose myself to things like going up into here or even coming up into this upper stuff here where I'm worried about toe triggering something from above. And we don't tend to trigger wind slabs from below. We tend to trigger them. They tend to break underneath our skis or a little bit above us when you're in this kind of terrain, but that's not really a problem that we toe trigger. And this persistent slab thing too, like that's not really something that's even been human triggered in the last 10 days in this area. It's going to require a bigger trigger, or it's going to require you to be in a place that's thin and weak. Anywhere from that snowpack goes from kind of like thick like this or thick like this. It's going to be right at that rock outcropping. These are the kind of places where you're going to trigger a persistent slab avalanche? So it's a good question, Scott, but that's why I'm managing terrain, so I don't actually have to answer that question. I'm not going to go try and sneak across this thing or do anything weird. It's just too much exposure. A cornice fall, yeah, Raz. A cornice falling could trigger the deep persistent slab. Yes, absolutely. So again, that's why I'm not staying up here. And you guys did a great job. 97% of you said stay away from this stuff today. Yeah, because this blue train is just not in. Because absolutely, if like you can actually see these cornices here, if one of these peels off and then hits a thin rocky place like this, like these are the kind of places where you're going to trigger persistent slab. So yes, you guys are killing it. Thanks so much for making this interactive and asking the questions. That's what makes this really interesting. We're going to move on to the next one. Okay. Oh, let's clear these drawings. Okay. So let me just move this guy. Okay, great. Coming into a new scenario, we're going to go back to the same piece of Avalanche Training, so keep that in mind. But this is actually the forecast that came out at 4 p.m. this afternoon. So a natural avalanche cycle is expected Friday, and all that low density snow we've been enjoying lately is now available for entrainment. And what they're meaning is that they can be picked up and moved. Oops, you know what? We just skipped ahead. One sec. Okay, there we go. We'll get to that one in a minute. This is the forecast that was written today for the region that I was just showing. New snow and wind are forming deep and reactive slabs. Okay, things have changed a little bit. So you see, like in the span of 24 hours, like the forecast I showed you for the first scenario is literally the one that was written yesterday. Now, this one was written at 4 p.m. today, and it's valid for tomorrow. So this is the forecast you could go out and check out. If anyone's ski touring tomorrow in the South Columbias, this is literally the forecast. And now we're going to think about how our terrain habits need to change coming into what's actually a storm day. So what's jumped out at us? Well, we've gone from considerable, moderate, moderate to high, high, considerable. Okay, that's a big change. New snow and wind are forming deep and reactive slabs. Potential exists for storm slab avalanches to step down to deeply buried weak layers, resulting in very large avalanches. Avoid avalanche terrain overhead hazard. Well, now we've gone from that possible wind slab, and now we're into a very likely up to size 2.5 storm slab. Snowfall is expected to continue until Friday night, bring up to 40 centimeters of low density snow. Reactive storm slab avalanches are expected at all elevations, including loose dry avalanches in shelter areas and wind slabs and lee terrain at mountaintops. If triggered, now the forecaster's worried about step down avalanches getting down to something deeper. So we've put, about an inch of water, about 25 millimeters of water for some of you AST2, and people want to get technical. We're putting a lot of load on our snowpack, and it's changing. So even though we were out, like we literally could have been ski touring the train we were just looking at today, but now tomorrow it's going to be different. Now the persistent slab problem too, it's bumped up from unlikely to possible, and it's still big. If triggered, this layer's potential will be larger than expected and being very destructive. So hopefully this is a great kind of real-time example. Okay, so now we've got this storm slab that's very likely. We've got 40 centimeters of new snow in the last 24 hours. We've got our persistent slab in play. Now I want to put that same quiz back up, and I'm wondering what terrain everyone feels like is in today, if any. So now it's changed a lot. We're not going to want to expose ourselves to any kind of overhead hazard at all. It's going to be a blustery storm day. We're not going to be able to see much. There's a ton of new snow. So what has changed? What kind of places are we going to actually be looking at going into today? Give you another 10 seconds to comment here. That feels like long enough to me. You guys are crushing it. Great. yeah, 97% of us felt that purple is in. A few people felt that yellow might still be in, and a few people felt that orange might still be in. And yeah, some people thought blue might still be in. So I'm just gonna back this up. The only train that's in now today is this below tree line stuff. So purple is in, and I think everything else is actually out today. I'm gonna back up a little bit.
And Grant, I should note that a lot of people in the chat said they would just go to the ski area or stay home, which is probably also a good decision.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you don't have to go out there and you know, fight the Avalanche Dragon every day. I'm playing hooky from work for an hour or two in the morning and going banging out some quick ski hill laps tomorrow morning as well. And I think that's a good choice. Like, why fight it? This is why we have ski hill passes. But I want to show that you can actually, there are safe options here today. And I just think that, you know, what I would do on a day, let me get my annotation back up here. Great. Can I draw? Yes. Okay, so now I'm starting to become really concerned about areas like this. I wouldn't want to be at the bottom of anything like this. I wouldn't want to climb up anything like this. But let's say I can safely access through somewhere like here. Let's think about what's happening here a little bit. These are avalanche paths. So when things go big, they probably start, you know, I would just assume that on a day like tomorrow, that there will be big avalanches occurring. They may be even possible to run like this. And suddenly you can see that avalanche path jumps out there. This one too, this one is actually, it's gonna be out. We don't wanna go anywhere near that thing. I want to be really careful with stuff from here that might start to come down, like that's an avalanche path. And that's a tricky one too, because you might just be coming up through these trees and feel like, oh, just a little opening, but you might not be able to see what's above you. These are obviously regular performing avalanche paths. There's another one here. This is actually a very small feature. This is probably a path too that then spills into this. This stuff is all out. This is all just one giant. Can't see. Oh, do I have to close the pool? Okay. Can you manage the blue train if there's no issue? Yeah. What's that?
I closed the window there.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that question, Sukej, in a second. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I apologize. Yeah, this stuff's all out. Like, I just don't want to go tangle with any of this stuff. But what I'd probably do on a day like today is, if I wasn't going to go to the ski hill, I'd probably come in here and I'd work I'd probably come like along this, and I'd probably come up and throw a skin track in to somewhere, and I'd probably hang out like in these trees. And then I would use that to make a pass like that, come back on my skin track, and then I might kind of come over to here, might ski one of these paths, and kind of so on, just like leapfrogging my own tracks while not exposing myself to any kind of overhead hazard. I probably wouldn't get into this. So that's kind of that's the one thing you could do today. You could throw a skinner in, you can stay in the trees. And this being said, like, if you're hearing audible avalanches, if you're seeing shooting cracks, if you're getting whoops or settlements like that, like, it's probably time to turn around and go home. But I do suspect that even on a day like with high hazard, you know, bear in mind the hazard is considerable below tree line, which is what this is. Just real quick, like, this is all below tree line. And so that relates to this part of the forecast. This kind of vaguely is the tree line zone. And then this is all alpine. So I'm not going to go into any of this. I'm going to avoid the stuff at tree line too, because I just don't like, I could get really screwed up if I got an avalanche that ran me down into here. And natural avalanches are going to be happening too. Like, I don't want to have this thing ripping out and maybe trying to cross this thing, even if you're doing it one at a time. It's just not cool. So the only real choice you could have today would be to come out and play in these trees. And even then, you're going to want to be watching for different signs. And I actually agree that this is probably a day that the ski hill is going to be great, but it is possible. I just want to state that it is possible to go into the back country. You just got to really watch it. And you gotta be careful too, because this might be pretty innocuous if you think you're walking around here at lower elevation, but you're not realizing that something can come down and smoke you here. Camille, yeah, shouldn't you be rid of the avalanche paths above? Here, man, I don't think that these things are gonna, it's hard to see. There's a bit of a bench here, and then it comes down again. I'm not really worried about this thing like just coming and blowing into the trees here. I think that, I don't see that. And that's why I'm also not going to come over here, because this stuff definitely comes into the trees. But I'm just not going to go in and involve myself here. And Sukaj saying, can you manage the blue train if there's no wind slab issue? Absolutely, but not today, not on this day that we're talking about. But if it was a low hazard day, like, or if we're going to get into some scenarios where we talk about going into bigger terrain when there's a time for that. Just with these scenarios, it's not the time, but that is a good question. What hazard situations do you dig a snow pit for? Oh man, if I didn't have an avalanche forecast, to be totally honest, when I'm out recreating, I don't dig many snow pits, and here's why. I can go dig a snow pit right here, and it's only valid, I mean, that's even too big, it's not going to tell me that much. I can go dig a little snow pit right here, and there's these great images. Maybe Alex, you could dig it up, that the ASARC group did from the University of Calgary, where they took a slope much like this one, and they dug 100 different snow pits in it. And they did all these tests, and guess what? They got everything from very reactive to almost no result at all in a place that was like this big. So snow pit tests don't tell you that much that you don't already know. Like, you know what you're dealing with in the avalanche forecast. We're kind of getting that information already. I would, in a day like today, I'm choosing to go be in this terrain. I've already decided none of this is open, and no snowpack test is going to make me change my mind. So as a professional, of course, I'm out there digging snowpack, I'm digging tests, I'm doing lots of snow pits, but it's really more about managing the terrain in a way that you don't have to dig as much. Maybe if it's been a few days and after the storm, and you're thinking like, can I go start, as we were talking about earlier, like, can I sneak across this thing? Well, yeah, maybe you dig somewhere like this, you get an idea of what the snow might be doing here, use that information to quickly walk across this. Maybe you dig a little bit to decide if you're going to think about walking through here. But in general, I think the avalanche forecast is going to tell you that too. If you're in the trees, can you trigger a slide from below? Yeah, under some conditions, but it would have to be a persistent slab that we're worried about toe triggering. It certainly can happen. But we're talking to you about that in the avalanche problem too. So I don't think you're going to trigger a storm slab from below necessarily here, but it's certainly possible to given some conditions. Kevin asks, if you know that these trees are 30+ degrees, maybe look for lower angle trees elsewhere nearby before trying these. Yeah, honestly, I mean, I'm gonna go ski 30-degree trees no matter what. I'm not too worried about it. Yes, I mean, to be honest, with 40 centimeters of new snow, I don't think you're gonna be able to ski anything less than 30 degrees. I think you'll just be stopped. That's a quick plug for why sledding is awesome, because you don't need to go into any kind of train. You can just go be rapping through this and having a great time. I love skiing. I grew up ski racing. I still am on snow 50 to 100 days a year, but there's a ton of place for snowmobiles. So Sean Freiberg asked, with considerable rating in the trees, are you still looking for slopes 30 degrees and less? Yeah, what are you avoiding in a day in the trees like this? So yeah, I'm avoiding openings in the trees that are big, or that are actually avalanche paths, and sticking to the tighter trees. That's where I'm going to be hanging out. Take one more question here before we move on. Are there physical characteristics of storm slabs that are different than wind slabs? Yeah. So it's an anonymous attendee. It's not that the crustiness is with wind slabs, it's they feel stiff. They don't feel crusty, they feel stiff. So something we've been penetrating in deep snow when you're skinning and touring up, they have like a hollow drum-like sound. You can kind of hit your pole into them. It feels more like chalky, stiffer. When they're really reactive, you might get some shooting cracks moving away from your skis. But storm slabs can be deceptive because they can feel quite soft. And that's why I'm just going to go to somewhere like that's really simple like this, that's 30 degrees and less. And I'm just not going to tangle with anything else. So great questions. This is awesome, you guys. I'm going to leave this example here, and we're going to move on to another one. Thank you so much for coming and playing Train with me. I'm stoked.
Hey, Grant, we just had a couple comments that maybe you could change your cursor color to yellow, possibly. It's hard to see those in the trees.
Oh yeah, I will.
Just to switch it up a bit. And then another person's just saying, when you are reading off the questions list there, because they don't see them as quick as we do, if you could just go a little bit slower, would be greatly appreciated.
Oh, in the poll?
Yeah, no, in the Q&A box.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you got it.
Yeah, no problem. I know we're just trying to smash through them here. We got a lot.
Yeah, but point taken. Okay, so clear the slate. We're back into a new product here. And this is actually for our sister agency at Parks Canada, our fellow forecasters over there who write the Glacier National Park or Rogers Pass Bulletin. And this is what they have to say. This actually just came out a couple of hours ago. This is for tomorrow. A natural avalanche cycle is expected Friday, and all that low density snow we've been enjoying lately is now available for entrainment. What they mean by entrainment is that it's available to be, if an avalanche is in progress, it can take all that new snow and add to its mass. Expect avalanches to run far and fast, picking up mass as they go. Ooh, spooky. They're calling it high, considerable. It's the same thing, actually, like they're seeing very similar amounts that we were seeing previously. They're saying the new storm, it's just nice and simple. I like this a lot, actually. So it's everywhere, all elevations, all aspects. It's going to be very likely to almost certain, I would say. And they're saying these storm stops to be as big as size 3.5, which is terrifying, to be totally honest. The new snow overlies a previous cold and faceted upper snowpack. Indeed, it does, because all that time that we had when we had this cold snap, it faceted the upper snowpack. So it's a weak layer that this snow is falling on top of. And they're saying they expect avalanche activity to peak on Friday. Whew. This is sounding like maybe it's time to go to the ski hill. If triggered, the storm slabs may step down deeper layers. I really like what they've got here. I want to see, I don't know if I can actually train. Can I change this? No. I want to see if I can make it any, no, just give me a second here. I don't actually know that I can, oh, maybe I can. Yay, look at that. Oh, this is going to be good. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be yellow. And we're just going to make this. We're going to make it a little bigger yet even. Bear with me. Okay, now I think we're cooking with gas, or you should be able to see better. I really like this. Minimize overhead exposure during periods of heavy loading from new snow and wind, because that's when avalanches happen. That's when natural avalanches typically happen, when there's heavy loading. Now they're talking about the dry loose problem. We often think that these dry loose, or sloughs as we commonly call them, are benign, but they're not. When you have a lot of storm snow moving, it's shocking how quickly these kind of things can push you over. You really need to watch it. They're expecting to expect loose snow avalanches in steep sheltered terrain. So that's steep sheltered terrain. That's what we were just talking about in the last example. So we have to be careful with sloughing. It's a new time. With lots of unsettled snow in the upper snowpack, these could entrain significant mass. Use safe ski cutting techniques. Ski cutting is playing with fire. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but be aware of party members below you that might be exposed to your sloughs. I like this forecast a lot. So we're going to move. Can I just go with this? No. We're going to move into the next piece of terrain that I bet many people will recognize. Who recognizes this? Oops, let's clear this stuff. Somebody does. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on amateur ski cutting. Oh God, I don't know that. Yeah, ski cutting is dancing with the devil. Cannot. Thank you, Bobby. Brilliant. This is Cannot Creek. So let me just get my annotate going here. There we go. Okay. Here we are. So yeah, this is Connaught Creek. Ahead of this, somewhere up, it's kind of out of frame, but this is Baloo Pass. The highway is down here and like just out of frame, but this is Connaught Creek. What is the obvious problem that I'm going to have trying to get into any of this terrain today? Can anyone quickly type it in? Because we talked about this a little bit earlier. This is a place that people commonly go to. Like you literally walk out of the visitor center, like somewhere just off the screen, and people think that it's all flat down here too. And it's a place that beginners, yeah, thanks, Linda. It's a place that beginners commonly go to thinking it's an easy spot. You don't need a permit to go anywhere here either. So it's kind of a place people commonly go in here. But what about this big monster? Boom, that's you down there. And it has all this snow. There can be an avalanche up on anything like in here, anything up on this piece, video peak here, just out of frame, but these things can come down and smoke you. This is a big problem. So I've gotten a little bit ahead of myself. Let's bring on the shading. Let's get a poll up if we could, please, Brent, about what terrain is in today. So what terrain is in today? I think it's fairly obvious that orange terrain is not in. Yellow, purple, blue. Give everyone 10 more seconds to come up with an answer. Like I should sing the Jeopardy song. Da, 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 da. Oh, let's close it up. Yellow, yeah, okay. Pretty much everyone thought that yellow's in. About 15 people think purple's in, and 28 think that blue is in. And I want to just address this a little bit. So yellow is in, but this photo, it does something that's kind of tricky right here. And ooh, oh, there we go. Okay, this avalanche path actually pours right down across the skin track. And so it is a spooky place to hang out. I don't know that I want to cross that. If I did decide that I was going to cross that to go access this terrain, well then I would probably cross that one at a time quickly and regroup on the other side in the trees. And Anonymous says go somewhere else today. And I think that that's a good message. Because the tricky thing is that, like, yes, if you could get here safely, like I think there's a lot you could do with this piece of terrain. You could go up there and you could, throw a skin track in here, but you're really, there's gonna be natural avalanches running. I don't think I'd want to cross this thing today, actually. So it's kind of a trick question. I don't think I wouldn't be into going and crossing this thing tomorrow, even though a lot of this would be in play. There are some options. You could get it up onto, places like the Grizzly Shoulder. There are places you could go kind of just out of sight from here where you don't have to cross any avalanche paths, but I don't think I'd want to walk anywhere along here. I don't think I want to cross underneath the big path here. I definitely don't want to walk underneath this one. And I definitely don't want to walk underneath any of these ones. So just an illustration that, even though we think we might be safe going into what looks like gentle trees, you've really got to be careful with your access and egress on a day like today when, we can expect avalanches to be running and going quite big. Let's just suspend disbelief for a second because I want to address Linda's comment. About ski cutting. Ski cutting is something that ski patrollers do as a means of controlling avalanches and triggering them. it is playing with fire. I would never recommend that anyone go ski cutting to manage hazard. You got to be good at it. You got to be really experienced at it. You got to safely know that you can get across a piece of terrain very quickly. You have to have a safe point that you start at and a safe point that you finish at. You don't want to be ski cutting above people. I just think that ski cutting is not a good practice for any of us to be involved in. Do I use it myself as someone who's been in this game for 20 years? Yeah, I do. But I wouldn't be using it on a day like today. I use it at times where it's lower hazard, and I've also been doing this for a really long time. I just think that ski cutting is not a good thing for amateur folks, for people who are recreationists to be really involved with. I think it can go horribly awry. And then, yeah, Anonymous says, I feel like amateurs will ski at the top of a slope they might be worried about in order to decide if they want to ski the slope. I mean, yeah, if you could execute a safe ski cut, and this is really not the time or place for me to go into the details of that, that really is a skill. You have to know what kind of avalanche is ski cuttable. I mean, like a 40 centimeter deep or a 30 centimeter deep slab is not a ski cuttable avalanche problem. That's too deep. It's really used to mitigate very small avalanches. I'll probably just let it go at that point. But ski cutting is cooking with, it's playing with fire. And I just don't think it's a thing that any of us should be really thinking about using in the backcountry. Okay. We're going to move on. Our time has gone very quickly. It's hard to believe it's an hour already. I'll do one or maybe two more. So let's come back to the mouse. Okay. So let's clear this menu. Just bear with me for a second. Okay. Avalanche Hazard is improving. So now we're off into a whole new scenario. We're not dealing with the storm. We're not dealing with reality. We're now in the future somewhere. Avalanche Hazard is improving, but triggering avalanches in specific or isolated terrain remains possible. Be wary of lurking wind slabs and large cornices. Okay. It's moderate, low. There's been no new snow. There was a wind event 3 days ago, but it's been calm since then. It's -5 and staying cold. This sounds like a classic spring. We have got a wind slab problem, alpine tree line, but it's down to only possible. They're small to size 2. So we gotta look for them, but the recent winds have redistributed snow into hard wind slabs on lee at upper elevations that may be possible to trigger. Give cornices space. Large cornices may trigger avalanches on slopes below. So we know we got to avoid wind-loaded terrain, which we'll be able to feel. We want to avoid cornices. And what's this about? With this unlikely persistent slab problem, it's down 40 to 70 deep. And it's most prominent, which is pretty interesting, on sheltered slopes near and below tree line. And see, like these two areas are highlighted. This one's not. So this persistent slab is buried surface ore, which is commonly a tree line problem. So that's something to think about. There's uncertainty of the distribution of activity of this persistent slab across the region. So where you're going, it might be there, it might not. We're trying to get a handle on that. So we're going to move over into the next feature. We're going to clear everything out here. So again, we've got lurking wind slabs. We've got something of a unlikely, but we've got a persistent slab problem that does exist. Particularly at tree line and below tree line. Let's bring on the shading, and let's get a poll up if we could, Brent. Jonathan asked, lurking wind slabs. God, what does that mean? It's such a funny phrase, to be totally honest. Does this mean the pits are a good idea, or would you be able to go by feel, as you mentioned earlier? I'm going to go by feel. Yeah, I'm going to just be feeling wind slabs. I'm not going to be a pit. If I dig a pit and I'm looking for a wind slab and I find it, well, I probably got myself into the realm of the wind slab, and I don't want to be there. So I probably already kind of got myself in trouble. Lurking the aspects for this picture. Yes. Let me see here. I actually do know this piece of terrain. Okay, so this is all north facing here. So everything, so this is north. That would make this east. So a lot of this is east here. This is also pretty north. So take, and David asks, take a moment. Let's do 10 more seconds here, and then we'll get into some of the questions. I feel like Linda's one of those professionals. She's saying, look at the shadows in the trees to figure out the aspects. She's right. Let's do 10 more seconds here. Okay, let's go ahead and wrap it up. What do we got? Cool. Okay, so we've got vast majority, 66% feel like purple is in. Even more people, 80% feel like yellow is in. Again, most people feel like orange is in, and only 32% feel like that blue is in. And I probably have biased you guys a little bit because let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. I'm actually going to remove. Well, we can close that poll up if you don't mind, Brent. Thank you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what's actually going to go back to. Let's try drawing this way. I think it'll work. Okay, so most people feel like orange was in. Most people feel like yellow is in. Everyone felt like purple is in. This is a bit of a trick question because, yeah, I mean, this stuff here today, it might not be skiing that well. It hasn't snowed for a while. You're probably gonna be able to find skiing there, but it's moderate low. So I think that now, and with this persistence lab is unlikely, and the persistence lab, to be clear, is at tree line. So we kind of feel like the persistence lab is in this zone that everyone felt like was probably in. It's gonna be kind of like around this area. And what about this? This is actually the realm of the, we're going to have more problems with that persistence lab. A day like today, I might actually be thinking about going a little bit bigger. I might think about, depending on where you can go, let's say that you are coming in this valley. I might be starting to move into some of this terrain and working through the trees up here. And this might be a place that I start to, then I get to here and I reassess. This is my turnaround point because I can either just ski back down these trees, or I can think about even possibly skiing this avalanche path. And that would be something I would be thinking about on a day like today. Because if I go up here and, I'm tromping around in this wind slab and it feels like they're dead, they're possible. I'm gonna go up there and I'm trying to see if the snow feels wind loaded. If it doesn't feel wind affected, this might honestly be a time where I do, up here in like a safe place, I might do a small snow pit test, or snowpack test here to kind of see if I get any reactivity in the surface snow. If I don't, I might think about skiing one of these paths on a day like this. If that felt good, I might go ski one of these ones. And then I might think about something here too. I mean, below tree line we know is like, as many suspected, I didn't give you this option, but like this is low hazard, not much happening down here. And actually this is low hazard too. It is a day that if you know how to recognize and identify wind slabs, that you could think about going into some bigger terrain. But you're gonna need to go up there, you need to go and check. It's not totally green light. You're gonna need to go and say, how does the snow feel underneath my skis? Is it stiff or is it soft? And you start with a small bite too. That might be where you kind of like step out. Here, I'll just kind of clear this out for a bit. But if I was going to step out and do that today again, my first pass would be somewhere like this. And then I might go into a piece of terrain and just kind of see like, how does this feel right here? And if I clear that back, you'll see like this is I can survive an avalanche that happens in here. I'm gonna see if this feels wind affected. If it doesn't, if I dig myself a quick hole and I also confirm like I'm up here, I'm not really seeing much in the way of wind effect, it might be a time that I ski this. So something to think about. Just because it's big doesn't mean it's always out. This is a time when it's kind of, you have to go up there and assess to say if this is going to be in or out. But if this was a popular place on a day like today, I bet you'd go up and there'd be a lot of people that would be more than willing to jump into this, whether they're right or wrong. For you get for the folks thinking about it, reading the forecast, don't, you know, the wind slabs are old. They're at the tail end of their lifespan. We're not saying they're likely or very likely. We're just saying that they're lingering out there. And just for a little bit of a tip here to read between the lines and something to think about, like even at low hazard, there's gonna be wind slabs here. Let me just make this a different color. Wind slabs are kind of this omnipresent thing up in this kind of big terrain. So if you're going to go up here and play in this kind of terrain, even if the hazard's low, there's going to be wind slabs up here. So if you're going to go and explore in these kind of places, you're going to have to get used to getting a feel for what wind slabs look and feel like and having a plan to manage them if you want to go up there into that kind of terrain, because they just exist there. Even in low hazard. So that these are old wind slabs. They're like 3 days old. You're going to have to go up there and kind of check for yourself, but it might be appropriate to go up there and get into some of the bigger terrain. You know, something like this that I didn't give you as an option, but it might be the fact that you can kind of go up through something like this and ski a path like that. That's actually, it's a little bit hard to see with what I'm doing here. Let's just change it a little bit. Let's go a little bit narrower. Draw. So, you know, you might be able to go tour to something like this, come around on this bench and like have some great skiing here. And if that feels good, you might think about going over and skiing this path. So it's all about kind of taking small bites of terrain and kind of picking fights you can win. Getting some more information, seeing how the snow feels underneath your feet. Like if you go into this and it feels stiff and slabby, or you kick off a little avalanche, well, then you're not going to go over here. You're just going to retreat. Maybe you just come back into the trees. But if it's feeling good, you know, you can take that first pass, get your skin track, ski that, come back around, maybe move over, maybe even start to head up into something like this, because there's no persistent slab avalanche up here. Maybe just make a nice pass down, something like that. And if that feels good, like come back down around, you can ski that to the bottom, come back down around, work your skin track up. And maybe you come out and you ski something, you know, actually, let me do this back up. One thing you might want to do, so you come in your second pass, come into this, avoid the wind slabs that are like right near that ridge crest, because again, they always exist up there. Let me just get a little bit different. There we go. So come up here, maybe dump into this, avoid that top feature, and maybe go ahead and ski something out. Lots of options there today. Wind slab lifespans, you know, when they're forming, they're more sensitive, 24 hours. They can still remain sensitive. And then every time you get beyond that, like as you start to get out towards 2 and especially 3 days out, like they lose sensitivity really fast. Great question, Katie. Sean asks, if orange and yellow are 35 degrees and less, are you still worried about the persistent slab problem? Yeah. Persistent slabs have a tendency to be problematic even in low angle terrain. And I just like, this is classic tree line. Like if I have the option of going and doing cooler stuff that's in the alpine and gentle, I probably do that. Good question. The plan to manage them, I mean, again, you're back to choosing the terrain. You know, with wind slabs a day like today, like I'm not going to go into this big tiger country, but I might start thinking about something like this, feeling the snow as I move along, and then maybe think about skiing a lap down with something like that. Because the managing them is just avoiding them. That's the plan. What are your thoughts on skiing through? David Robin asks, what are your thoughts on skiing through forest fire burns? Does the snow have the same reactivity as tree paths, less moisture? Yeah. So burns tend to be surface horror factories, and we won't get into that why, but maybe Alex, you can grab Carl Clausen's blog on burns that he wrote this fall, and you can send that send that to David and just drop it in the chat there, because that gives a really nice explanation of that. Why is there no persistent slab problem up there? Great question. So here's why. When that was all forming, So there's no persistent slab problem in the Alpine because what happened was surface hoar likes sheltered places. It actually, the trees shelter it and protect it. So when those big winds come in, let's say that, we were in southwest flow, this is the wind direction ahead of the storm, and it's coming through here. The wind would have just cleared all the surface hoar out of some of these bigger features. But in the trees are protecting it, protecting the snow surface from the wind. And so it lingers in there. And so the surface hoar tends to be stuck in the trees in places that are wind sheltered. So that's why it's common that with surface hoar, which is that mountain equivalent of dew, it's that big feathery crystal that grows on the snow surface, the winter equivalent of dew, excuse me. It has a tendency to form where it's protected. And in the Alpine, where there's just the wind can come through and blow out ahead of the storm, it's often gets taken care of out there. So that's why there's not a persistent slab up there. John Goodman asked, what about the ski quality of the old wind slab? Could it be hard pressed? Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, once it's hard pressed and it's not reactive, so you're walking around on it, it's doing nothing. Maybe you do dig a quick snow pit. You're just kind of assessing as you, like in my earlier example, I came up here and then I'm assessing here. Maybe I do a quick snow profile, or more importantly, maybe like the whole time I'm walking up here, especially as I'm getting up into this, I step off my skin track and I just dig down with my hand and I just pull on it and I see how it feels. Does it just come off very easily, or is it bonded together? It's an advanced technique. And if you're curious about some of these quicker tests that professionals use, I would really encourage you to first, the AST1 gets into those kind of techniques. And AST2, essentially, we're just telling you what to look for, what to avoid out there. And AST2 is really the trick to learning how to properly manage avalanche terrain. It's an amazing course. I would really encourage you to do it somewhere you can go stay at a hut if you can, because you'll be immersed in it. And you're going to learn all these cool tricks that we as professionals use, these very quick tests. Because when I'm out in the snow and I'm walking up something like this, I can do 25 hand shears up here, and I probably won't even slow the group down. And then I might do one snow pit test, because that takes so much longer. Does that make sense? There's all these little tiny tricks of the trade that you can do, or digging snow profiles. If it's an old wind slab, I might only dig down 30 centimeters. Do a quick test. It takes me less than 2 or 3 minutes. The hand shears I can do without even clicking out of my skis. Again, these are advanced techniques. I would encourage you to take an AST2 or hire a guide for the day. Find someone that's willing to go out there, tell them what you want. Tell them that they're looking to learn some new tools to go out there and help you make on-the-fly decisions about things like wind slab on a day like I've described here, and you will get a ton of learning. You and a couple buddies split the cost of a guide for the day. They will be stoked to go out there and show you some of these tricks of the trade to manage the wind slab hazard. So I think that's a great thing that you can go and learn about how that feels with the guidance of a professional. Greg asks, what is the best resource to see historical wind events in an area, or is it mentioned in the forecast and as soon as it's in the area listed? What usually makes an event a wind event? Yeah, it's speed, it's prefrontal winds. That's a really nuanced question, and it's not universal. And there's not a good resource to go and look at, unfortunately, to see like when winds are blowing. It gets super duper nuanced. But I think it's going to be in the forecast. And if we've done something like this, we're talking about it not being in the Alpine, like we have pretty high confidence in that. So I think that's something you can just use all of our expertise to be aware of. Good question. And yeah, again, wind slabs feel stiff underfoot, but I would really encourage if wanting to learn more about that, hire a guide and get an AST2. That's where you really learn how to do this. For a situation like this, how long will the persistent slab be for a situation like this? How long will the persistent slab be a problem for? Oh man, they last for so long. It's not uncommon for them to go 4, 6 weeks, something like that. It didn't last all the way through the end of the season, but it was with us for a long time. And yeah, persistent. They're a pain in the butt. We're just rounding the Avalanche Canada weather stations have a week's worth of wind speed. And yeah, and direction data. Yes, they do. But here's the problem. Like, you might be looking at a station that's at valley bottom here. Or oops. 1 second. There might be one station up here, like way over here if you're lucky. No, it's not. Stand by, annotate, draw. Okay, there we go. You might have one station, 50 kilometers away, and then you might have another station that's down in that valley bottom. Then you got to be really careful. You can't just go off these weather stations and say like, oh, it's the wind slab's not in the Alpine. But that's what we're doing because we're out there traveling the train, we're looking at it, we're relying on other professional observations, we're doing our due diligence. So, I think if we're confident that it's not in the Alpine, you can bet on that. Is the persistent slab can be reactive all winter long? Depends on the slab. Some can, yeah, but they typically don't go all winter. That's rare. It happens sometimes, but yeah, okay, I think we've gotten through those. I've got one more here. Here I was concerned that we weren't gonna have enough material, and we have had plenty. Let's clear this out. Okay, one more here, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you for all the great questions. I've so appreciated the dialogue. It's kind of amazing. When COVID first hit, we moved these things online. I was really bummed I wouldn't be able to go out and connect with all of you, my readers. But you guys coming into an event like this, and there's still a few hundred people on the call. It's awesome asking all these questions. It just makes it a ton of fun. So thank you. Okay, last one. So this is spring. And let me just move this. In the spring, we have an agreement that we actually rate the hazard for the highest part of the day. So that's in the spring, we're rating the hazard when it's coming unfrozen. And it's challenging because it might be low hazard for most of the day. And then the heat of the day, it's considerable. That's what's happening here. So loose wet avalanches are expected during periods of daytime warming and during periods of rain showers. Overnight freezing was about 1,200 meters, should develop a hard crust that may deteriorate during the heat of the day. Okay. Wet slab avalanches are expected during periods of daytime warming and during periods of rain showers. Overnight freezing, okay, we've kind of already got that. So when we look at this, there's no new snow, light wind, there's going to be hazy sunshine today. I want to think about going into something like this. I don't have a slick pull for this one, but I just want to illustrate a point. If you're on this snow and it's frozen, you're golden. It's low hazard. If we're only talking about it being a problem when it's during the heat of the day, just get back to my draw. So it's like during daytime warming, heat of the day, like you can kind of go anywhere up here. You just need to be off of it before it unfreezes. So this is the classic corn skiing. It's actually low hazard when it's already frozen because we're worried about loose wet and wet slabs. We're not worried about wind slabs. We're not worried about deep persistent slabs. You can get away with a lot. So on a day like today, you might come into this basin and you might be able to even work your way through something like this. That's all frozen. You're not worried about an avalanche. And then you could even, work along this. And then the idea is that just as it's coming in frozen, so this is that first centimeter starts to warm up. That's the corn nature. It starts to warm up and you can kind of dig an edge into it. Then that's the time that you drop this line, you head back to your truck and you crush a soda or a beer at 11 a.m. Maybe not a beer at 11, but you give your congratulations to your buddies. You get up really early and you get down really early and you're off of it before the heat of the day. Because yeah, in the heat of the day, then you're going to have loose, wet avalanches, you're going to have wet slabs. But if you can be there nice and early, you can kind of go anywhere. The spring, when we're in these kind of conditions, is the time we get up into this kind of terrain and to ski these big, bold lines that come down into big features like this. But you just do it early. So again, you're on it when it's refrozen. That's when ski crampons are critical. And sometimes ice axes, even boot crampons, because the surface is so hard, you're digging into it and it's frozen. Everything's frozen in place. It's an isothermic or one temperature snowpack. You can get up on big things and you can get down big things because you're hitting it right as it's unfreezing. And that's kind of the name of the game for these spring-like conditions we start to get into, you know, late March and April. So many of us tend to put the skis away at this time of year and run for the bikes and the rock climbing gear. One of my favorite things to do around this part of the world is to get up really early in the morning, go for a big objective, kind of like I'm getting up at, you know, 3:30 or 4, getting into place. I'm up on top of something like this by, you know, 8:30, 9. Sometimes I end up having to sit somewhere like this, kind of waiting for the sun to come up and start to unfreeze things a little bit. And then I'm dropping into these kind of features at, you know, 10, long before it's starting to totally unfreeze. Now, if you start getting up here, and let's finish that thought, I'm getting down them early. The thing to watch out for is if you don't get a good overnight refreeze, so you're up here it's 5 in the morning and you get to here and you step out of your skis and you are sunk up to your waist, well, then it's not refrozen. So you got to go home. If you didn't get a good enough refreeze overnight, a lot of things will do that, just warm air temperatures. And we'll be talking about those things in our forecast if it's not getting a good overnight refreeze. So the name of the game is it gets cold overnight, it freezes up, and then you can go out and do a lot of really cool stuff. That's the game. You know, actually, I don't see any questions right now. I'm just going to go step into one more quick example. We've kind of already covered this, but when it's the green brick, as it's affectionately called, there's been 2 centimeters of new snow, light wind, cloudy, -8. So these wind slabs are getting old and tired, but you might still find the odd right or triggable wind slab in lee locations near ridgetop. Well, what's in for today? I mean, again, this is a time when I would go out and get into something cool. This is a time to go out and ski the big lines, to get after it. But you still have to be aware that, like, if you're getting into something like, you know, like this, oops, we don't want that. Sec, draw, there you go. Okay, so let's move this. So, you know, this is an extreme feature here. And yes, like, it looks like there is a line through this. If you encounter a small wind slab here, you've got a big problem. It's likely gonna kill you and flush you off this thing. So you gotta be aware of things like that. But, like, you know, low hazard, I might be totally inclined to come walking up here, zigzagging up through this, zigzagging up through this, you know, getting up on top of here, and then, like, having a nice, big, amazing run that just drains this whole thing. Like, we are pro skiing big lines when the time is right at Avalanche Canada. That's what our passion. That's how a lot of us got into this, is trying to decide when things are truly good to go. So, you know, I would encourage you, like, you see these kind of conditions during periods of big high pressure, when it's not snowing, when it's sunny, which can be a great time to be out. It's often cold. And then in the spring as well, like, when you've been skiing and snowboarding all winter, I encourage you to stick with it through the spring and enjoy those times when it's low hazard and you can get out there. Not really worried about avalanche hazard so much, but you're worried about more objective hazard or mountaineering hazard. Those can be just some incredible days in the mountains when we're fit. The days are long, and there's lots of cool stuff to do. Linda says, important point to not be too attached to your objective and to reevaluate goals to the day. Yeah, really, really well said, Linda. Because again, like I mentioned, you know, like, if you get up here and if you think you're gonna go do something like this and you get up here, you're like, oh, it's too weird. Back off, ski something like that. Or, you know, again, if you're up into this kind of thing, it starts to get super duper windy and you see fresh snow being formed into slabs, like, probably time to turn around. But yeah, great time to be out exploring when it is those green brick conditions, as you can start to tick off the big lines. That has been a lot of fun. We've been at it for 85 minutes here. I thank all of you for all of your participation. It was rad. I think that's all we got for the night. I'll stick around for another 5 minutes to, yeah, thank you, Linda. I appreciate all of your commentary and questions there. Yeah, we're around. Brent, do you want to say, we'll kind of give it a minute here before we totally take it out. Do we have any other questions that I haven't gotten to or anything, Alex?
Yeah, hey Grant, thanks. That was amazing. Yeah, I don't see any questions right now. I'll give people a couple of seconds here to get any last questions in, but yeah, we're getting lots of kudos though. So I think people really enjoyed your presentation.
Good. This is one of my favorite ones to do. We'll have a fresh one again next year. And I think there'll actually be one for sledders coming up soon too. Andrea asked, she joined late and asked, yes, so we are recording. So I think you can go to our website and go to the Learn tab, if I remember, and you can go to recorded webinars and the whole series is there. We've had so many good webinars this year. It blows me away. The one that I would really recommend everyone checking out is from, and maybe Alex, you'll remember, but I really enjoyed my friend Chris Rubin's presentation on the avalanche that had been triggered in the RMR backcountry while filming. I got a lot out of that. Maybe you could even drop that link in. But that one, it was just a week or two ago, and I thought it was killer.
Fantastic. The Ready to Rescue one.
Ready to Rescue. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah. Amazing textbook, video recorded, companion rescue at its finest.
Yeah, I just can't say
Chris
enough.
Rubens, it's just quite shocking how perfect it was done.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because it was like, that was, yeah, Chris is one of my regular ski touring buddies, and that's why, because he's so on it. But it just goes through, like, that's what we all have to be ready to do, to really go into that second nature thing. So I really encourage you to check that one out. And of course, go through the list. There's a lot of great presentations there. We've got a lot more good presentations to come. I think I'm doing another couple before the year's out too. So if you want to come have another fireside chat with me, I would love it. And I could answer a few of these last questions. Can we answered Andreas, Jonathan? Could you summarize the conditions, situations when you definitely would dig a pit and do some tests as an amateur? No, I think we'll be here for the next a long while doing that. It's a good question, but the answer is just too long. I think that with that question, I really encourage you, Jonathan, to get into an AST2. If you've done an AST2, I would really encourage you to hire a guide for the day and ask that question and get somebody go out there with you for the day, and they will be able to just stoke you out with so much information. Some recommended reading that I'll just touch on too. I've got some of my favorite books from my shelf. If you want to really get into it, this is the beauty of doing your presentation at home. Just give me 1 second. Where is my spruce trimmer? Here we go.
I like how you're picking the books out of the mountainscape.
Staying alive in Avalanche Training, like this will kind of answer, I think, your question there, Jonathan. I still refer back to this thing all the time. This is by my biggest mentor, Craig Gordon, and Bruce Kemper really got me into this. This is Bruce's book, and it's just got these great illustrations in it. It's called Staying Alive in Avalanche Training. You can get it anywhere at your local bookseller. It is so good. I would really seek that out, Jonathan, because I love your question. I just can't really address it. If you're stepping it up a little bit and getting into, and maybe I'll just stop my background if I can do that quickly. I can. More. No, I'm just gonna let it go. This book, I know it's like weird. There we go. So it's a mountaineer's book, backcountry skiing. It's written by this guide called Martin Volkin, Scott Shell, and Margaret Wheeler, and it's got so many great. Awesome, thanks, Brian. It's got so many great tips and ideas for when you start to push it and get into the bigger terrain, and when to do that and when to back off. There's a lot of good questions tonight about, like, how do I manage wind slab? This has a lot of that information. I can't say enough good things about that. And that's probably all the plugs I'll give for now. So AST2 course, get yourself a copy of Staying Alive in Avalanche Training. Backcountry skiing, the skills for ski touring and ski mountaineering is phenomenal for when you're getting out there pushing it. I'll hit one more book up before we leave too, and that's this book that came out from my biggest mentor, really. Craig Gordon. He is just a phenomenal human and Avalanche forecaster who's been at it for a long time. The book is called Dragons in the Snow, and it's the Avalanche Detectives and the Race to Beat Death in the Mountains. And if you're really interested in, the inside mind of Avalanche forecasters, professionals, and want to kind of get a feel about what this is about and get some really neat stories, I would highly encourage you to get that book. Hotline, Sean's asking if there's a hotline we can ask a forecaster a question before we got on the backcountry. No, there isn't. But if you reach out to us on social media, we'll often reply. So something to think about there too. I'm going to let it be there. I so appreciate everyone tonight. Big thanks to Alex and Brent for making this happen here late into the evening too. Couldn't have done it without those guys. The second book is Backcountry Skiing, Skills for Ski Touring and Ski Mountaineering. And maybe I can probably stay on and put a link in there to the thing too. And then Dragons in the Snow. So you got Staying Alive in Avalanche Training, Backcountry Skiing, Skills for Ski Touring and Ski Mountaineering by Martin Volken. And then Edward Powers' Dragons in the Snow. Those are also my favorites. So there you go, Will. I'm going to hand it back over to Brent. And thanks, everyone.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Grant. That was like incredibly comprehensive. It's even, recommending books right from his own personal library. Hey, you gotta like that. What a great interaction it was tonight. And it's, it's such a good reminder to really look at, understand those avalanche problems. I know Simon Horton back in December, beginning of December, he did a webinar there on avalanche problems and understanding them. It's well worth checking it out. Check that recording out. I think Alex is going to drop a link in the chat box there. I think many people sometimes you only look at the danger ratings, red or green, is it good to go, but not really the avalanche problems. And they're so key to choosing the right terrain. So if you understand what the problems are and how to pick that correct terrain to stay away from them, then, couple that with the information of the danger rating, and you can make those good trip plans. So thanks again, Grant. Always amazing having you as presenter. Goodies tonight. Tonight we're got MEC as our presenting sponsor. And with that being said, we have a draw for some MEC draw prizes. So Alex is going to draw a couple names here. The first draw is for a pair of MEC Snowpark Merino socks.
Yes, indeed, Brent. I've got, with the background, you might not be able to see the socks, but these are nice gray, yellow, and I guess a dark gray, size medium Snowpark Merino socks. And the winner is Caroline Egan. So congratulations, Caroline. I'm going to throw an email in the chat that you can, so you can get in touch with us to claim your prize.
Sweet. Now we got another draw prize. It's MEC Pack Rat durable stuff sack.
Yep, right here, nice little durable 20-liter stuff sack. Yeah, great, handy for packing stuff and I guess keeping stuff dry as well in your bag if you need some more of that. And just making sure the person, the winner of this prize is still here. Let me just check the list. Okay, yep, the winner of this is Aurora Phillips. Congratulations, Aurora.
Awesome. Congrats. And then we got one more. It's the MEC Alpine Light 32-liter backpack.
Yep, I've got that one right here. Hope everybody can see that. I would love to have this for myself. Might have to look it up, look for one. But the winner of this is Ray Pilipow. So congratulations, Ray. And as I mentioned, if you've won a draw prize, so Caroline, Ray, and sorry, I'm blanking on the other name. Yeah, just email producer@avalanche.ca to claim your prize.
Right on. Congratulations to all those winners out there tonight. And thanks to everybody for participating tonight. Alex, he's put a ton of links in the chat box tonight. Particular interest, there's the train exercises that were found in our Abby Savvy online tutorial course. Those are great to review. And you'll also find some train exercises in that presentation by Simon Horton I mentioned, understanding avalanche problems. So as we move on, folks, this weekend coming up, I know majority of you folks were all skiers tonight. We did have some split boarders out there, but Canuck Split Fest. It's 12 years in the running. You know, that's happening this weekend for us. We got webinars on Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the evenings with pro snowboarders and splitboard guides and other folks out there. You know, there's even an online fundraiser with tons of prizes like brand new split boards and all different kinds of gear and stuff going on out there. So check it out. You know, it's another webinar happening here this weekend. With that being said as well, you know, us folks here, we're the nonprofit organization. So I'm going to ask you folks, hey, if you want to or feel the need, please, all donations are totally appreciated out there to help support programs like these tonight. Our next webinar, Thursday, January 20th, getting the most out of the mountain weather forecast. Lisa Irvin from Meteorology Services of Canada is going to be presenting on that. They make this weather product for Avalanche Canada so that we can push it out and give it to you at the public. It's a fantastic product, and some of you folks may think it's a bit complex, a little over your head, and some folks may read it like their daily newspaper out there. But Thursday, January 20th, we're going to do an really good dig deep into it and understand, you know, what products and how it's used for forecasting and how this affects the snowpack and your day's outing.
Lisa's one of my heroes. That'll be so good. She is she's amazing. I'm gonna choose that one.
She's a fantastic presenter too. She gets right in there.
Totally.
But I'd really like to thank everyone for coming out tonight, you know, showing your interest in avalanche safety. And I hope you folks had a really great evening. And with that being said, I hope you have a good evening. And we're gonna send her off. Thanks, everybody.